Okay, I'm gonna share my screen. Can you all see? Okay. So the title of my presentation is Body Maps, Alternative Cartographies, and Human Non-Human Practices of Care. So just to give first like a context, my research, as part of my dissertation, my PhD research is in Mexico, in the state of Oaxaca, which is located in the southeast uh, region of the country and is next to the Pacific Ocean since I was working in the coast, in the Pacific coast. And here is another map where you can see the Oaxaca state, but then more like specifically the communities that I was working with that are also by the coast. And they are all living around this system of lagoons that are bodies of water. And it's a primordially Black and Indigenous community in Mexico. So when I first got there in 2017, one of the women, a fisherwoman named Christina, uh, told me about something that happened that was horrible, as you all can see in the images here. And what she describes is the water started to look like it was boiling, a lot of bubbles, as if something was being burned from below. The water got very hot. It started to smell like sulfur. She was in the middle of the lagoons fishing as every day, and she felt like a movement, like an unusual movement of water. What she is describing here is basically later on she discovered that it was a 7.1 scale Richter earthquake in Mexico. In media, there was a lot of news about this earthquake that had terrible damages for communities around Oaxaca, Guerrero, or even like Mexico City and Puebla. However, no one talked about the effects on the lagoons and the massive death of fish that was happening there. So when I was in the community later on, I asked the community why this happened, like why this massive uh, death of fish is happening here. And what Black and Indigenous people, local people, were describing us was basically there were toxic gases on the subsoil of the water of the lagoons, and with the movement of the earth, these gases came into the surface, killing the fish, but also all the ecosystem, like mangroves, shrimps, and all the animal species. So what we can see here, after me being there for 14 months of fieldwork, is that it is happening on ecocide of a lagoon. This is the killing of an environment or the killing of ecology. And what I am looking at is basically a case of environmental racism. I say this because environmental racism refers, according to Robert Brulard and other scholars, to the way in which ecological policies and ecological practices affect disproportionately people of color. And in the case of Mexico, they affect disproportionately to Black and Indigenous populations. I am engaging with the concept of slow death by Laura Berlant and slow violence by Robert Nixon to describe how, contrary to a death that is a natural death or a death that is, for example, in the case of necropolitics by Membe, he describes how like policies and actions by the state, by the corporations, by capitalism are killing strategically like populations. But usually this death is like really like fast and quick and is happening right in the moment. However, I am taking this slow death and slow violence to reflect how there are other mechanisms that still are targeting racialized populations in the context of Mexico, but they're happening very slow. For example, the case of the lagoon that has been dying, slowly dying, for the matter of now almost 20 years. And if this environment dies, obviously the population around it, that is Black and Indigenous population, has to be either displaced or dispossessed or disappear. So in this sense, when the government is ignoring the conditions of the water and the conditions of basically this environment and ecosystem, they're also ignoring the Black and Indigenous population that primarily live from these lagoons. These communities mainly they do fishing for living, not only for selling fish, but also for consumption for their families. And now recently they're also doing tourism, but this tourism is also around the lagoon. So basically all the economy and all the life is around this body of water. So as part of my dissertation then, I am engaging in the context of Mexico. Um, the Mexican State Nation Foundation was founded under the myth of mestizaje. Basically, this ideology says that in Mexico we are all a mixture of Spaniard descendant and indigenous descendant. However, as Jose Vasconcelos, that is a philosopher and one of the architects of this ideology is basically anti-Black and anti-Indigenous in the sense that it's erasing the Black population in Mexico, but also trying to acculturate and integrate indigenous populations into the Mexican nation. So I'm proposing the concept of mestizo geography to describe the material tool of mestizaje ideology that serves to territorially and especially build the nation state through the elimination and dispossession of Black, Indigenous, and other racialized communities. In other words, mestizo geography is the material dimension of Mexican nationalism, which imposes an homogeneous mestizo identity and as a consequence, an imagined colonial notion of a mestizo space. What I'm proposing here basically is that mestizo geography is a imagined territory where the Mexican state, when it was founded, uh, and it delineate what was the territory of this Mexican state. They also claim ownership over the territory, dispossessing populations. But this dispossession continues throughout until now. Like this is a colonial continuum of the first of the colonization and then through the Mexican state. And now this dispossession happens not only through basically claiming ownership over the land by the state or other companies, but also through pollution or through tourism. So there are other mechanisms of dispossession. So as part of my methodology in the coast, I did a workshop called Mapeando el Cuerpo Territorio. This was based on a methodology that was originally made by a collective, a feminist geographer collective from Ecuador that is called Mapeando el Cuerpo Territorio, or Mapping the Body Territory. I did this workshop in 2 communities in the coast where I was working. It was in Zapotalito and Cerro Hermoso, the 2 communities. Here you all can see some pictures of the workshop. And what I was basically doing is asking women in the community to first to draw themselves so they can have their own self-representation of their bodies. I think, as many other scholars have said, body maps can be a methodology, a decolonial methodology in the sense that they are the ones who are speaking from themselves. We don't need a written word or even like an oral word. It's through symbols and through drawings that they're basically interpreting their own history. I was asking women after they drew themselves to start drawing, what are some of the main problems in the community? And many of them, I mean, all of them, they were drawing the water. Here you can see, I took other pictures. The water is always there. And as you all can see here, for example, there are like some trash that it was drawn and fish that is dead. So I was asking them, like, what are the problems in the community? And all of them drew the water and the pollution and basically the ecocide that is happening. Another thing that I asked them was, what are like some safe spaces for them? Like, where do they feel safe? And they also drew like their homes, their kids, even they drew like some of them, her, for example, she drew her kids as a safe space for her. And but also again the water, so it has this double interpretation, like the same water that they feel safe and they feel happy about is the same space that is causing them grief because there are loss of a lagoon. Here, for example, she wrote Laguna Contaminada, polluted lagoon, and as a safe space her house, and even like others put the church. And another big question that I asked the women was, where in their bodies are they feeling these emotions? Like where are they feeling grief or anger because of the ecocide, but also where do they feel safe? Where do they feel love or happiness? And all of them, almost all of them, drew the heart as the place where they recognize, as you all can see here, in their bodies, where they are feeling the emotions. Through these body maps, what I was trying to map, but also them, was what is the intimate relationship in between the land and women's bodies, and how an ecocide, the killing of a lagoon that is in their land, affects them not only economically, politically, socially, but also it has an affective effect on their bodies and in their emotions. So it's an intimate relationship of the body and the land. And the concept of cuerpo territorio, I'm taking it from Lorena Carnal, that is a Xinca feminist woman from Guatemala, where she and her collective describe again the intimate relationship in between the land and women's bodies. And I think body maps is a great methodology to actually reflect this from the perspective of women without an interpretation or a mediator. And and here also women, this territory not only has the problem of the contamination of the pollution, but also there's like drugs, there's narco violence. So women also were doing that. Here, one woman you cannot see here, but she was talking about drugs. And also here, Rosa wrote mucha drogadicción en los adolescentes, a lot of drug addiction in teenagers, gives me pain. So basically, this was a space where women could talk about or draw about their problems, and but also how they feel about land, and where are the spaces where they feel safe and happy, and what are the people where they connect to each other. After finishing these body maps in the two groups that I did, we all put all the body maps together in the floor, and we analyzed what were the differences and the similarities within the body maps. And what women were saying was that it was until that moment where they realized that basically all of them were going through the same. So they were like, yes, like I didn't know that I was feeling grief or I was feeling sad because of the lagoons. I thought that it was an isolated feeling, but now I know that my neighbors, my family here in the communities are feeling the same. So in that sense, it was also a powerful moment of collectivity and sense of common. So what are women doing since this ecocide is happening? There, for example, in this picture, some fisherwomen that are part of a collective, Black and Indigenous women, are in one of the canals that is connected to another lagoon. If you all remember, one of the first maps that I showed is a system of lagoons that is connected. So here women are in one of the canals to clean it from trash, from wood, because they believe that if they clean this canal, the lagoon can have some oxygen and basically not die. And these women are doing this every month, once a month at least. They go through one of the canals of the lagoons that is connected to another canal, and they clean it. So here we can see a practice of care and reciprocity between human and non-human bodies, or human and non-human beings. How women are taking care of the lagoons, trying to clean it, trying to basically make it survive so it doesn't die, by cleaning it, and also they take their children. So this is an intergenerational process of care. For example, here, one of the women is with her mom too. So women are the ones who basically, because they're staying in the community, a lot of the men from the community are migrating towards the US or to other cities because now there's an economical crisis. So women are in charge of reproducing life. And here I am engaging with the feminist economy, Silvia Federici, that talks about the reproduction of life as a labor. And basically this is domestic work, and how domestic work is a work of reproducing life, because in the end, by cooking, by cleaning, by taking care of the children, they are reproducing life, and that is by itself a labor. So in this sense, women here are reproducing life not only by taking care of their children or their community, but also taking care of a lagoon or a non-human being. So there's a sense of reciprocity, since the lagoon is the one that gives them life. They're also trying to give life back to the lagoons. And another way where we can see how this level of reciprocity in between human and non-human bodies is, for example, women have created different alternative economies to survive facing the ecocide. For example, they're creating medicinal plant products, and this is based on the deep knowledge that they have of their environment. But they also know that without the lagoons and without the environment, this would not be possible. So they're creating this to cure illnesses, different illnesses that are happening, but also because this is another way of relating to the environment, to know all the medicinal options that they have in their own environment. And they're also creating handcrafts to sell. But this is important to say that this all has happened as an alternative because of the ecocide that is happening. But in the end, women are the ones who are reproducing life and that are taking care of the environment. And that would be all. Thank you so much.
Thank you.